Hi everyone, and welcome to week 6. This week we're going to be looking at the work of Edmund Burke, who is considered to be the father of modern conservatism. What makes him a modern conservative is that overall he supports democracy, he is in favor of individual liberty, and he distinguishes himself from other conservatives at the time in the sense that he does not believe in a restoration of absolute monarchy or a return to systems of government supported by divine right. Burke, however, is also a critic of the Enlightenment, which he believes is too mechanistic, too scientific, too focused on the individual, and he's also a critic of the social contract tradition, particularly the social contract as outlined by John Locke. Burke's most famous work is the reflection on the Revolution in France, and in this work he's really in many ways prescient, in the sense that he predicts the eventual reign of terror. He published the work in 1790 before the rise of the Jacobins, and basically what he's criticizing is the rhetoric used by the French revolutionaries, the trends that he sees there, which he believes derive from a political demand for equality. Now, Burke was a supporter of the American Revolution, but not a supporter of the French Revolution. And the distinction that he will make between these two is between the political demands that each revolution made. In the American Revolution, the demand was for liberty, and here he's talking about the idea of individual liberty. This, in his mind, is a legitimate political demand. The demand for equality, however, he believes is illegitimate. Equality leads to economic and social leveling, and it sweeps away important institutions that are necessary to hold society together and bind human beings to one another such that they can live together. Now, Burke bases much of his theory on his view of human nature. He believes that human beings are flawed creatures. To use religious terminology, they are sinners. They are fallen beings. And so he adopts this sort of biblical view of original sin to human nature, and basically argues that we need restraints. We need to be restrained, because if we are given free rein to do whatever we want, we will likely cause harm to ourselves and cause harm to others. So when Burke talks about the idea of individual liberty is a good thing. And we should think of liberty in terms of doing what we want. However, we also have to consider what we will in fact do if we are given the opportunity to do what we want. And what we would in fact do may be harmful to ourselves or others. And so we need law to serve as a restraint on our possible behavior and our potential actions. So when Burke talks about liberty, he's talking in terms of a regulated liberty. And this is something that he believes we need, it's something that we want, and it is something that law can provide. Now, with this idea of liberty in mind, Burke will argue that the social contract as envisioned by Locke is insufficient. Burke believes that the Lockean social contract is too similar to a business arrangement. It has a sort of vulgar feel to it. And he believes that government needs to be more majestic. It needs to have more gravity to it. Because we need those constraints to ensure that our liberty is properly regulated. So for Burke, we need to conceive of the social contract in multi-generational terms. So our social contract is not solely with those living today. We owe something to those who have come before us, our ancestors, and we owe something also to those who will follow us, our descendants. So we need to think of the social contract in this multi-generational way. And so with this in mind, this is where his view of tradition comes into play. For Burke, tradition is the glue that holds a society together. Tradition is what serves as the legitimizing force for law. Liberty is not the product of the social contract at any given point in time. Liberty is not the gift that we give one another by adhering to the social contract. Liberty is something that has been passed down to us by our ancestors. And so this obligates us then, with this multi-generational social contract in mind, to defend that liberty, to ensure that that liberty is preserved in order to pass at least the same level of liberty down to our descendants. Now, we can expand on that liberty. We can increase our liberty, but we ought not allow the government to infringe upon it, because we owe it to our ancestors to preserve the legacy that they have passed down to us. Now, this is the danger that he sees with the French Revolution. The French revolutionaries demand equality, and they demand a dismantling of the social order. Burke believes strongly in the notion of social hierarchy. There are those who are superior and there are those who are inferior. He is in favor of the idea of equality of opportunity, arguing that offices should be open to all, but he will add to that, they should not be open indifferently. So when we think about politics, for instance, a politician should, in Burke's mind, be a well-educated individual. They should have the social graces. They should be from the better sort. A average person really has no business in politics based on their averageness. Obviously, an average person can educate themselves and qualify themselves for political office or for higher stations. But, Burke would ridicule the idea that politicians should just be Joe Sixpack. That would be something that would horrify him. The wisdom of the common man is something that he believe is non-existent. The common man does not have wisdom. Social order matters, social hierarchies matter, and they allow us to live together and really know our place within society. The French Revolution seeks to eradicate the existing social order, and Burke believes that this is very dangerous. The French revolutionaries are basically pandering to the worst sorts. They are pandering to the lowest classes and the lowest individuals, promising that they're going to tear apart the nobility, loot the churches, and distribute the wealth equally. This is, in Burke's estimation, a threat to European civilization. It is a threat to the old order, and it is a threat to the traditions that have been handed down for centuries and have allowed Europe to become great. This is the danger that the French Revolution poses. And in many ways, Burke is correct. When the Jacobins come to power, they declare year zero, they rename the calendar, they do as they promise and tear down the old order, but essentially leave ruin in their wake, and ultimately lead to the rise of figures like Napoleon, who undoes much of what the revolution had accomplished up to that point. So Burke is basically a defender of the idea of liberty, of democracy, and an opponent of revolution. Now, Burke will advocate the idea of reform, but reform should be incremental. And this is a common theme that we see throughout conservative thought, that rapid change is dangerous because it is untested. If we make too sweeping a change, it's very difficult to go back and restore what might have been lost. Incremental reform is the preferable path because we can basically test out as we are going along whether or not these reforms are working. And so Burke would be a strong advocate of that approach to any sort of social change or any sort of political change. The reformist approach rather than the revolutionary approach. Okay, I hope you enjoy your week. In the discussion board, we'll be evaluating Burke's ideas on revolution and reform, and just something to think about with regard to the multi-generational social contract. Would this idea apply to an issue like climate change? I think that Burke might look at it and say, if we're looking at this multi-generational social contract, there is a Burkean conservative way of approaching an issue like climate change. Now, obviously, we see that many conservatives today are not interested in even addressing this topic, but a Burkean conservative, I believe, could make a strong argument that we should be addressing this argument based on these conservative ideas. Okay, I hope you enjoy your week, and as always, if you have any questions, feel free to contact me.